Thank you, Anna. Welcome, everyone. My name's Councillor Cal Corkery. I'm the chair of the Housing and Social Care Scrutiny Panel, which is the meeting that we're all here to attend today. Please be assured that we've put appropriate cleansing and social distancing measures in place to ensure that the meeting is undertaken in a COVID-secure manner. This has included a request for all attendees to have taken an LFD test within 48 hours of the meeting, the use of the NHS Track and Trace app or attendance log, 2 metres social distancing, the wearing of masks when not seated, and a one-way system in the Guildhall. Limited public seating has been made available. However, this meeting is also being webcast to allow the public to attend remotely if they so wish. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. We haven't got anyone up there anyway. Can I please ask members to remain seated at 2 metres throughout the duration of the meeting and to wear a face covering in less seated. In terms of deputations, there are no deputations that we've received today. Just a couple of points of quick housekeeping. If there are continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts, and please assemble at the turning circle at the east end of King Henry Street past the University's Park building. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust's fire marshal regulations, anyone who signed in Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. May also draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be on camera, including those making deputations, but there aren't any. Members of the press and the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they're finished. So in order to use the microphone, you press the button in front and it should light up red, and then if you press it again once you finish speaking, it should turn off. So on that note, I am going to go around the room and just ask people to briefly introduce themselves, and then we can get started with the rest of the agenda. So if I could start over to my left with Anna.
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Thank you, Anna. Steve.
Steve Groves, Head of Building Maintenance at Portsmouth City Council.
Councillor Stuart Brown.
Meredith Hughes, Assistant Director Buildings, Portsmouth City Council.
Felicity Goodyear, Council Tenant and representative of the Residents Consortium.
Maria Cole, representing the Residents Consortium.
Thank you all very much. So there are 2 councillors here today, which I believe makes us quorate just about, so we can proceed, luckily. We have had apologies for absence from a number of other members of the panel. So we've had apologies for absence from councillors Lee Hunt, Gemma New and Linda Syme, so they've informed us prior to the meeting they will be unable to attend. And just for the record and for anyone else that's attending, as well as the councillors and council officers, we've got Maria and Flick here from the Residents Consortium as they introduce themselves. And the Residents Consortium is a group of council tenants who meet up once a month to talk about issues related to their housing and to council services more generally. So you're very welcome and thank you for joining us. Right, move on now to declarations of members' interests. So this is for the councillors of us in the room, just to disclose anything that may be relevant. So I'll start in that I am a Portsmouth City Council tenant, but in accordance with the Code of Conduct, my understanding is that's not preclude me from involvement in any decisions related to housing, with the exception of anything that may relate to my specific tenancy. Is there anything else you've got, Sherry?
Nothing to declare.
Okay. None others. Thank you. Moving on, the next item on the agenda are the minutes of the last meeting, which took place virtually on Wednesday, the 11th of November 2020. I believe I was the only person that was in attendance at that meeting and is here today, or the only councillor at least. I'm not sure about the officers. So I'm assuming there's probably not going to be any corrections needed, but I will give the opportunity. No? Okay, yeah, so I'm happy that they're an accurate record of the meeting and happy to agree those and sign those off. Okay, those minutes are agreed. Right, now moving on to the 4th item on the agenda, which is the main thing that we're here to discuss today, and that is to agree the next topic that this scrutiny panel will look into. So again, for the benefit of anyone who may be watching and is perhaps new to the work of scrutiny panels, the role of our scrutiny panel is to look into an issue relating to either housing or social care, or housing and social care, and then undertake an investigation to understand better that issue and how the services as a council relate to it, and then potentially make some recommendations about either best practice or changes that need to be made going forward. So what we have before us today, and what has been circulated, is a scoping document in relation to day-to-day repairs for social housing tenants in the city. So this has previously been discussed amongst those of us that are on the scrutiny panel and agreed as a topic. What we're here today to do is kind of agree a scoping document which details a little bit more about exactly how we're going to undertake that review and some timelines around that. So the topic, as I said, is to look at the day-to-day repairs, or the proposed topic is to look at the day-to-day repairs for social housing tenants. So that includes people that are tenants of Portsmouth City Council, but also the various housing associations who have properties within the city. And when I say day-to-day repairs, there's been some discussion around this, obviously relating primarily to repairs that may be reported by a tenant within their home or their block, and then need to be carried out or undertaken in a reasonably soon basis after that. So what we're not talking about is kind of longer term planned maintenance works. As an example, if a block needs repainting because it hasn't been repainted for a while, that's not going to be within the scope of what we're looking at. We're more looking at kind of day-to-day repairs in people's homes primarily. So the scoping document has been circulated. Bear with me and I will find it. Yeah, so we've got a proposed timeline, and we've also got a proposed kind of scope for what should be included, which I've talked about. I will read out what is here just so we're entirely clear what we're talking about. So we're talking about focus on day-to-day, i.e. responsive repairs, for example, a leaky tap, rather than planned maintenance work, as I said, for example, repainting of communal areas in blocks. We've previously talked about wanting to begin the investigation by doing a survey so that we're able to reach out to hopefully a reasonably wide group of tenants across the city who are living in social housing to understand better what their experiences are of living in social housing and trying to get repairs undertaken. So there has been a survey that has been drafted, I believe. I don't think it's been circulated yet. I think it might still be with comms. So have you seen the survey? Yeah, so that's the questions that we've requested to put into it. So it's relatively, I mean, it's probably going too far almost to call it a survey. It's more of a kind of data gathering exercise, which is it's very basic information, asking people about which social housing provider is their landlords, just asking for them a quick, almost temperature check on the measure of satisfaction with their repair service. And then we're asking people to kind of feed back their experiences, so giving people a free text box which they can then enter in their experiences, either kind of positive or negative, or any issues that they particularly want to flag. The intention of this is that hopefully that gives us some data and some feedback to then start looking at any particular issues that we think of major significance, or any issues that are coming up time and time again that we can then use to put to the people that are responsible for managing those repair services across the various landlords. So yeah, the questions have been circulated. We are now working with the comms department to get this formulated up into an online survey that can then be circulated on social media, on the council social media, but also obviously us as councillors can use that to send rounds to our constituents and encourage people to respond to that. Once we're hoping to get that finalised pretty soon and be out for around 3 weeks, so within the next month or so we hope to have some feedback from that. The proposed timeline of the review is then that in January there would be an informal private meeting with residents, so possibly including representatives from the Residents Consortium, the repairs group that PCC is in the process of setting up, any housing association tenants that we can reach out to, and also anyone who has responded to the survey. And we'll be asking people as part of that survey whether they'd be willing to come along to a meeting like that to talk about their experiences in person. The next meeting would then be in February, which would be a public meeting with relevant officers from Portsmouth City Council's repair services and also housing association representatives to respond to those findings. And then in early to mid-March will be a further public meeting to sign off the findings in the report and discuss that draft report and hopefully get that all agreed by the end of the municipal year, ready for PERDA and the next set of elections. So that is what we have in terms of a proposal. And I'm very happy to kind of take any comments. I don't know if Stuart, as the other member of the panel, if you've got any feedback on that you'd like to give.
Just a couple of things, thank you, Chair. You mentioned the survey was going to be online. Do we know if there are any plans of providing paper copies for residents who may not have access to the internet? The other question I had was around the measures in the second bullet point. I've noticed on the repairs info document that was circulated as well, the housing associations rank on a percentage scale, so a 1 to 10 scale. I was wondering, are we, so that we get like for like, are we also planning on having ours as being a 1 to 10 scale, or have we considered possibly to make things a little more simple for people to understand, a star rating, so a 1 to 5 rating? Just because certainly when it comes to processing responses and thinking about how good something is, 1 to 5 can sometimes be more accessible for people to understand. It's bad, worse, average, good, brilliant. Whereas if you're trying to process how happy am I with something on a scale of 1 to 10, it can be quite hard to actually understand where your thoughts lie on that, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you, sir. In terms of paper copies, that was a discussion we had with Comms when we met with them. In fairness, I think we were asking them to do a lot of work in a very small period of time, and they usually produce surveys that are much more expansive and that they would kind of provide real detailed analysis for, but that would take months, of which we don't have. So what we're asking them to do is something much more limited and also kind of on top of their existing workload. So the feedback was that they didn't think paper copies would be possible because of A, the time it would take to design, and then B, the time it would take to input the data that comes from that. What I would say is that obviously once the survey is available online, there's no reason that I can see that we can't go out and engage with residents, perhaps who might not have access to IT themselves, and kind of take their responses and obviously feed that in on our phones or tablets or whatever else, just so that we're trying to do a little bit of outreach around that. It's clearly not ideal. In an ideal world, we would do a much more kind of expansive survey, but speaking to the comms team, they said that would usually take 3 or 4 months, of which we don't have. So this is a much more limited kind of data gathering exercise, and it's really just to give us some broad themes or ideas that we can then, I think, take forward in terms of progressing the investigation. In terms of the scale that we're asking people to respond to, I don't recall, I have seen the draft survey, but then provided some feedback on some extra bits that needed to go in. I think once that has been amended, my understanding is that it is going to be sent round to all members of the panel, so we can double check then, and if we think the scaling needs changing, then I'm sure that would hopefully be quite a straightforward thing to do.
Fantastic, thank you. Just thought then for members who may not, for residents who may not have internet access, perhaps some wording could go on the survey saying, if you're filling it in online and you know of a neighbour who doesn't have internet access, please consider, helping your neighbours fill it in as well, and get some residents to help each other get buy-in.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. We can take that forward. Thank you. Do you have any other comments, Stuart, or you're kind of happy with what's being proposed as a way forward? Okay, perfect. At this stage, I'm happy to take any other comments. I can see Flick over there. Yes, please.
Hi, I was just wondering, have you considered rather doing an email, texting, because the majority of people do have mobile phones, and getting responses that way, and that even if you just use emojis rather than numbering, it's even more simple, and then people can click on what they feel, angry, sad, neutral, happy, ecstatic, whatever. And the other thing I was wondering is it going to be anonymous, or will there be an option to have some anonymity about it?
Yeah, thank you for those suggestions. I think we can have that discussion with comms around what alternative ways there are for people to engage with it. I'm not too optimistic from the discussion we had with them. I think it's primarily capacity in some ways, i.e. they've already got a full kind of programme of works, and we've asked them to come in at quite short notice and do something additional on top of everything else they're doing. But we can certainly ask the question. In terms of anonymity, yes, there will be the ability for people to fill out the form anonymously. And then at the end of the form, it basically asks people, would you be interested in following this up by attending a meeting to discuss your experiences? If so, then please give us your contact details so that we can get in touch to arrange that.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Maria, have you got any feedback on what's been discussed? Okay. Right. With that in mind, I am aware that obviously we have been circulated a report produced by Meredith and probably with Steve's assistance, I'd imagine, which starts to kind of summarise really the council's responsibility with regards to housing repairs. I wonder if it's worth us just taking a little bit of time now, if you don't mind, just kind of to run us through that, to summarise it, so that that can almost act as an introduction and give us some background context.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Corkery. I won't take credit for it. Steve pulled the vast majority of the information together, and we pulled it together really to give a bit of an overall picture of what the repair service at Portsmouth City Council looks like for its 14,500 council residents. And I think it just gives perhaps a bit of a flavour in terms of how we deliver our responsive repair service, which is there are nuanced changes or differences to what's being delivered by our neighbours in housing associations and also our neighbouring local authorities. But Steve, I wonder if you could talk through or talk to the report, please.
Hi. Yes. So if I just sort of give a summary really of the report that's there that people can obviously look through. In terms of the structure, I started out really with just outlining what number of stock properties that we actually maintain, and obviously highlighting the age of the stock, which is predominantly in the 1950s and 1960s, and also just sort of the type of assets that we're actually maintaining. There is then the section which predominantly talks about our repair service, and obviously our main purpose is to try and carry out the right repair at the right time. And I sort of talk through the actual steps that are focused really on access, diagnosis, and actually undertake the repair. And probably the key variation with certainly a number of house associations that I'm aware of is the fact that we try to understand what is in the important time for the customer, and try to give an actual specific time that the repair can actually be undertaken. Then the key aspect is actually then getting the right operative there who can then undertake that repair and complete it. And and I guess a little bit is just to give a bit of context. I think we get around 1,500 repairs a week, which I've sort of put in there just to give a bit of context of how big the service actually is. That demand is met by residents contacting our area offices. 90% of our demand is by phone, so 10% is either other officers out on the estates or obviously people coming into the offices to report those repairs. And then the section 4 is really just outlining our out of hours service. So and that's really the purpose of that is really to make sure that we provide suitable help outside of office hours. And in terms of the value steps, that's very much about deciding what is the right resource and then coordinating that work. And for our repair service, that is not just a make safe service, although obviously if it's in the middle of the night, I'm sure the right repair is maybe that. But if we can complete the repair, we would complete that repair out of office hours. Section 5 really talks about our our contractors, our service providers that we employ on a cost reimbursable basis, and we've got a number of local contractors that we utilise. So there's some details in there, summaries of ComServe, Mountjoy and Liberty, all of which are based locally, and certainly an important bit for our service is the social value and added value to the community, and what the infographics in the briefing sort of outline is the variety of additional value that they try to add to the contract in terms of community projects and local employment and training, and links with schools and apprenticeships. So there's a bit of detail in there about that side of it. Section 6 just sort of talks about how we measure performance, and talks about the sort of measures that we actually use. We try to use a suite of measures to try and understand the service, how it's performing. We don't tend to set targets. We don't have categories for repairs. We try to just understand all of the repairs as they take place, and try to use a range of measures to understand where the areas are that we need to improve. And I've put in the table there just some of the measures of performance that we recorded at the end of Q2. And then finally, you know, clearly there are always areas that we can improve, and I've sort of highlighted there some of the areas that we are currently working on, and certainly we're doing a bit of work around how residents actually contact us. That's a key area that we want to try and improve, and sort of that's a little bit of a recognition that the world is changing, and I think the pandemic has certainly highlighted that in terms of how people perhaps want to make contact with us and when they want those repairs undertaken. Customer appointment options is definitely an area where we are experimenting, and again trying to improve, and that comes out of some of the areas where we do get complaints, is around where appointments are moved, and we know that's a frustration for some residents, so that's an area that we're trying to improve so that we can make convenient appointments that we can keep. And then the next two areas, or three areas really, are areas where there's particular pressure for us. Certainly recruitment and retention of key trades is quite problematic in the current environment. The market's very buoyant, and shortage of some key trades. And we have seen materials supply issues for some materials during the last sort of 6 months, and certainly price increases, all of which have put added pressure really on our repairs and maintenance budgets, which obviously are under considerable strain at the moment. And that's the briefing really, and the purpose really is just to give you an overview of what our service is actually about at the moment.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think that's a really useful starting point, because, like you say, it gives us the background and the context to the situation with regards to Portsmouth City Council's repair services. I know we've also had some information sent rounds that just kind of touches on housing association repairs and maintenance services, or information that's available publicly about them. Was it you that pulled that together as well, or does that come from a different source?
Sorry, Councillor Corkery. It was put together, James Hill, Director, pulled that. I would add the caveat, though, that the information is probably about 12 months old. We pulled it together this time, end of last year, so I would add that caveat. But, you know, the principles about how housing associations measure customer satisfaction, etc., still hold fast. The numbers might have changed slightly.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. Yeah, it was a short summary, just for the benefit of people that haven't seen it, on some of the major housing associations operating in Portsmouth, with information that's been pulled from their publicly available annual reports and their websites. Just with regards to the information they put out about their repair services. So that's useful, thank you. Are there any questions at this stage, Councillor Brown?
Thanks, Cal. Steve, just a couple of things really to help my understanding. Looking at your report on page 3, I spotted there was a bullet point there about identifying additional repairs the customer has and what needs fixing. Is that essentially when you turn up to do one repair, if something else needs doing, you do it at the same time?
Yeah, just to clarify that, Councillor, yes, that is the case, that our the process is that, when a resident reports a repair, we should be inquiring if there's any other repairs in that property at the same time that we can undertake. And also when the operative attends to undertake that repair, they should also be asking if there's any other repairs at the same time that we can either undertake or arrange. And the purpose of that is obviously getting into properties is probably the hardest part sometimes. So if we can maximise those visits when we're in that property, then we should take every opportunity to actually do that.
Yeah, it sounds like an eminently sensible policy to me. Do we know if that's unique to Portsmouth City Council, or do we think the housing associations have a similar policy when they do visits to tenants?
I would guess that's probably unique to us as an authority. It's something that we did when we did our intervention. I'm not aware of any other housing associations that follow the same sort of process.
Okay. And just a sort of a semi-related question on that then. On page 10, looking at the percentage of repairs fixed first visit, does that 61.6% relate just to the repairs that were reported initially, or is that including we found something else wrong while we were there as well, and is it all lumped in the same stats?
So just to clarify what that measure is, that is about when we visit a repair, is all the repairs that are undertaken in that property undertaken in one visit? So there may have been some additional repairs, but if they're all undertaken in that one visit, that would count as a tick, as in, yes, we did it in one visit.
So it'll include the subsequent, we've turned up and we found X as well?
No, it won't include the subsequent. So when you look at that measure, there will undoubtedly be a number of repairs that is impossible to do in one visit. So an example would be if you hung a new door and then it needed decorating, by default you would never do that in one visit. But it is just to give us a sense and help us when we're managing the service to understand, well, how many can we actually do in one visit? And clearly the ones that we hoped that we're doing in one visit is that leaking tap, dripping pipe, rehang a door. They're quite straightforward. It's just really, it's about us really understanding what are the type of repairs that we're actually undertaking.
Fantastic. And the last thing I was going to bring up, not so much a question, but more just a compliment, I think. If we've got 36 residents giving a complaint over a 6-month period, if my maths is right, that's an average of about 1.5 a week compared to the 1,582 average orders per week, and I think 1.5 complaints out of 1,500 is actually quite a good complaints rate, if I've got my maths right there.
Yep, that is correct. I mean, we are receiving, in terms of, and these are complaints that go through our formal complaints process. So in terms of stage 1 complaints, we typically receive just over 1 a week for our whole service. But I think the thing is, we do try to, I don't like to see complaints, but we always try to learn from them. So the key bit is that when those complaints come in, that we do review those as a team and try to understand if there's any trends that we should learn from so that we can further improve the service. And certainly some of the areas of work that we're working on are as a result of those complaints. So for instance, we do know that we do get complaints about missed appointments or appointments being rebooked, and that is why there's an area of work that we're working on to try and improve that so that we can improve the service to our residents.
And I think that's very much borne out in the satisfaction rating there. 9.96 out of 10 is phenomenal, especially with that volume of repair orders coming in every week. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corkery. I just wanted to add, Councillor Brown, that we've been delivering this repair service in this format since 2007, and both myself and Steve have visited a number of authorities over the country. We've had visits from other authorities and housing associations, and we've actually, I think we've retendered the delivery of repairs and maintenance, I think, twice in that time. And so we've had visits from incumbent contractors, but also other, national and local contractors. And as Steve says, I'm unaware of any other local authority, housing association, that delivers repairs in this way, where we would ask whether there was something else that needed when we visited to make that visit count to the best of its ability. The other thing as well, you mentioned about customer satisfaction, and I think it goes back a bit to the to the actual survey is both me and Steve commented, and I think one of the key things is making sure that the questions in the survey are as open-ended as possible. We ask as part of our customer satisfaction follow-up, could you give us a score out of 10 for the whole service? But if you don't give us a 10, if we're not perfect, what could we do to improve your experience, etc.? So it could be, the engagement at the front end with the housing office to do the repair. It could be a visit from a surveyor. It could be the way the contractor, performed or their behaviour, etc. Or it could be that the actual repair broke down after 2 days, etc. So we try and capture the detailed information. So as like Steve said, there's a number of things that we've got in train at the moment that are a result of things that we've learnt by actually being quite engaging with our customers.
Thank you. Thank you, Cal.
Thank you. Keen to see, I don't know if either Maria or Flick have got any questions for at this time. What I would say is if you've got issues maybe relating to your specific property or block, let's kind of feed that into the survey and the process down the line. But if you have got any questions at this stage about the report that Steve has talked through or the process or any of the statistics that have been referenced, then please do go ahead, Flick. And then Maria.
The only thing I was wondering was about the complaints, and then you kind of covered it, so I was like, I'll sit back now. But yeah, thank you.
I beat you to it. Maria.
Just one comment. Recently, the council has done something where if you phone the rent office, you are asked to you can do options, and option 1 is repairs, so that it means that we're not actually repeating what the repair is to staff at the desk and also to the repairs. We go straight through to repairs and it's dealt with straight away, and that's much better.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please, Steve.
Can I just, thank you, Maria. It's good to get that feedback, and that was as a direct result of some of the customer satisfaction scores we did, where we were particularly asking residents how it was to report that repair, and that was some of the feedback that we got. So that's why we went down that option to put an automated choice so that you would go straight through to that repair team, and that is about us trying to improve that part of the service, because obviously we recognise you have to repeat the same repair twice.
Thanks, Steve. Just actually on that, in terms of reporting repairs, it says in the reporting you said that repairs are predominantly reported by telephone, approximately 90%, or in person at an area housing office, 10%. Where would someone contacting the service or the council by email fall into that?
There is an option to report via the internet. So there is a report repair option on the PCC website. I've got to say it's fairly limited use, but we do get a use. I can't recall what the numbers are, but compared to the number of repairs we get, it doesn't even really warrant a percentage point particularly. But when I'm sort of talking about, certainly moving on, there are areas such as that we want to try and improve, and what we need to understand is why don't we get those sort of repairs reported that way? Is it about visibility or promotion of that? And how do residents want to go down that route? And I think, some of the conversations you've had about even surveys, very similar to the dilemma that we have, is on one hand, for some of us, it makes sense that you'd want to perhaps do some of that more interaction via apps, for instance. But obviously, we recognise that all of our residents are different, and for some people it would just be they still want to phone in or report that through the area office. So we want to have lots of different channels, but probably we don't get as much use on the online version as what we would probably anticipate.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the reason I say it is that when I've got a repair to report, I will tend to use the email address for the housing office, and then someone will then phone me back, which always seems a little bit kind of, it's not a massive problem, but it's just if someone chooses to use the email methods, then that might be the one that they prefer. But yeah, I appreciate most people, as you say, are not choosing to do that, so maybe that's why the system's not set up in that way. Okay, thank you. Have you guys got any further questions at this stage? Maria?
Yeah, just a quick one really. I recently moved into Ladywood House, and if we have a repair in the block for somebody's flat, we can report it to the scheme managers, who then raise it. So even the tenants don't have to do anything other than speak to, and the scheme managers are there all day long, which is much better than where I was. So just another place that you can report it.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. Right, so I think unless Councillor Brown, you've got anything else to chip in right at this stage, have either of you guys got anything you want to contribute? Okay, perfect. So I think we've done and agreed what we needed to do, which was kind of finalise the topic and then agree the scope and the process that we're going to follow. The next stage, as I mentioned, will be this, I guess, an informal short survey that's going to be distributed primarily on social media, and then we can also kind of use that to try and reach out to people we know who may want to contribute, whether it be kind of neighbours or people that we're in touch with in other ways. I think we can probably also, and I'd imagine, email that round to Residents Consortium members relatively easily, so people have got that information. So that will be the next steps. And then we'll follow the process that was outlined earlier, which was for the next meeting to be an informal meeting in January with residents from Residents Consortium, the repairs group that's been set up, any housing association tenants, and anyone who responds to the survey and would like to discuss any issues or kind of feedback in person. We don't have a date for that meeting, but we can, I think, sort that out by email at the back of this meeting. And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else we need to do. Is there anything else, Anna, or have we covered off everything we need to get agreed?
We could sort out a date for the January meeting immediately after this while everyone's in the room together.
That sounds sensible, yeah. So have we agreed everything now that we need to within the
If you're happy with the proposed timeline, I mean, there's the comments people have made about the survey. I'll send these to corporate communications and see if they can incorporate them.
Yeah.
But you're happy with the proposed basic outline?
I think so, yeah. Councillor Brown?
Sorry, just thinking about how many members of the committee aren't actually present today. I'm sure we can find a date that works for me and for you, but there are half a dozen other people that we probably ought to check in on the date on, so maybe doing it by email would be better.
Okay, well, yeah, that's fine, no problem. So I think we've agreed everything that we need to within the realm of the public meeting. So I'll just finish by thanking everyone for coming along, especially people who's been their first meeting. Hopefully we've kind of hasn't been too formal for you, but thank you very much for contributing, and Maria as well, who's a more kind of long-standing member of engagement with the Residents Consortium. I think this is going to be a useful topic to look at. I think obviously there's a lot of people in Portsmouth that live in social housing, whether it be the council or housing associations, and I think there's always best practice to be shared, whether it's the council sharing our best practice for housing associations or vice versa, and there's always going to be lessons to be learned. So I'm looking forward to getting the feedback that we get from residents, and hopefully we can encourage as many people to engage in that process as possible, and then we can obviously put any issues that are flagged or any feedback that is flagged to the relevant services to have that discussion as part of this investigation, and then hopefully come up with a set of proposals at the end that are going to be useful for everyone going forward. So thank you all very much for coming, and I think we can end the live stream now. Thank you, Anna.